Right now, somewhere in the world, there's a group of people sitting in a circle, listening to one person tell them they're the only ones who see the truth. And if you asked any of them if they were in a cult, they'd laugh. They'd say cult is what outsiders call things they don't understand. We're a family. We're a community. We're awake. But what if that's wrong? What if somewhere inside that circle someone already knows? And this is the question that should actually unsettle you. What if the people running it know exactly what it is, and the people inside it are the only ones who don't? In the 1950s, a psychologist named Leon Festinger came up with what is still considered the founding study of how belief survives contact with reality. He infiltrated a small group that believed the world was going to end on a specific date, and aliens would arrive to save the true believers. He wanted to see what would happen when the date came, and nothing did. Most people, you'd think, would see the prophecy fail and walk away. Some did. But the most committed members, the ones who had given up the most, money, jobs, family ties, didn't leave. They got more convinced. They decided their belief had saved the world, that the aliens didn't come because the group's faith had been so powerful it averted the disaster. Festinger called this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding two contradictory ideas, and the astonishing lengths people will go to resolve that discomfort without abandoning the belief. The group members weren't lying when they said the prophecy had succeeded. They had genuinely rebuilt their understanding of reality to make it true. The followers, it turned out, didn't know. But what about the leaders? Here's where it gets complicated, because a lot of researchers think asking whether a group knows it's a cult is like asking the wrong question entirely. A cult doesn't experience itself as a cult, the same way a fish doesn't experience itself as wet. The word cult is a label applied from outside by people who are not inside the belief system. Asking members to recognize themselves in that label might be like asking you to recognize yourself in a photo taken from an angle you've never seen. The format of the question is wrong, not the person. In the 1980s, a researcher named Robert Cialdini studied something adjacent, not cult specifically, but the techniques of compliance, foot-in-the-door requests, artificial scarcity, social proof, commitment escalation. He found that these techniques worked best when the person being influenced had no idea they were being influenced at all. The moment someone realizes this is a manipulation tactic, the tactic loses most of its power, which means the most effective belief systems are the ones that feel, from the inside, like nothing is being done to you at all. By their own rules, in their own internal logic, members may know exactly what their group teaches. But knowing what you believe is different from knowing why you believe it. There's a distinction researchers have been arguing about for decades. It's the difference between having a belief and knowing how that belief was installed, between being persuaded and knowing you were persuaded. There's a term for this. Metacognition. Thinking about your own thinking. Being aware of your own awareness of why you believe what you believe. It's what you're doing right now if you've ever stopped to ask yourself, wait, why do I actually think this? That's the question. Can people inside a high control group do that? And the answer, increasingly, is sometimes. But it's messier than anyone expected. In interviews with former members of groups widely classified as cults, researchers have found something strange. Many of them describe a kind of double consciousness while they were still inside. A part of them that recited the doctrine, defended the leader, recruited new members, and another part, quieter, that noticed small things. The leader's rules didn't apply to the leader. The prophecies kept getting pushed back. The family got furious when you mentioned your actual family. Former members often describe this second part as a voice they learned to ignore, not because they didn't hear it, but because the entire structure of the group was built to make listening to it feel like betrayal, sickness, or sin. They knew something. They just weren't allowed to know that they knew it. But here's what research still can't crack. All of that, the double consciousness, the suppressed doubts, the quiet noticing, it's about the followers. We can interview them. We can read their journals. We cannot get inside the leader. There's a question researchers of high control groups argue about endlessly. Are the people at the top true believers, or are they running a con? Is there something it feels like to be a cult leader, genuinely convinced of their own divinity, processing the same reality everyone else sees, but interpreting it completely differently? Or is the leader just running a system, watching inputs, adjusting outputs, with nobody home? The sociologist who literally wrote the modern playbook on this distinction described two types: the true believer, who started sincere and got swallowed by their own mythology, and the opportunist, who never believed a word of it. The unsettling part is that from the outside, in the moment, you cannot tell which one you're dealing with, and neither sometimes can they. Some researchers think we're massively underestimating how aware leadership actually is. Court documents and defector testimony from multiple groups have surfaced something consistent: private behavior that directly contradicted public teaching. Leaders preaching poverty while living in luxury funded by followers. Leaders preaching purity while violating their own rules in secret. Leaders telling followers the outside world was corrupt and dangerous, while quietly keeping passports, bank accounts, and exit plans ready for themselves. In plain English, the hardware for knowing exactly what they were doing existed. The lights, in at least some cases, were definitely on. But other researchers point to something else. Charismatic leaders often started as the most devoted member of something else first: a previous movement, a previous mentor, a previous failed identity. The mythology they built for others, they often built for themselves first, out of genuine need. Belief doesn't usually arrive from nothing. Like every other human behavior, it tends to be inherited, then exaggerated, then weaponized. Which means it's possible that even the people at the top started out somewhere on the same spectrum as everyone else, and only became something else gradually. One small lie, one small benefit, one small rationalization at a time. We're not looking at true believers on one end and cynical frauds on the other. We're looking at a slow slide, and most people who end up at the far end of it never experience a moment where they became a fraud. It just never feels like crossing a line if you're the one moving the line. And then there's the one piece of evidence that's hardest to explain away: the exit. In account after account from former members of groups across the spectrum, from small local groups to internationally known organizations, there's a recurring moment people describe. Not a dramatic argument, not a single shocking revelation. Usually something small. A leader caught in a lie about something trivial. A rule applied to everyone except the people who made the rule. And former members describe that moment the same way, again and again, across groups that have nothing else in common. They describe it as something clicking. Not learning something new, but suddenly being able to see something that, looking back, had been visible the entire time. Researchers who study these exits call it waking up, and the phrase shows up so often in so many unrelated accounts that it's hard to dismiss as coincidence. If that's not the experience of a mind that knew something on some level and just wasn't letting itself know that it knew, what is? So where does that leave us? The research says yes, followers often sense something is wrong long before they act on it. Yes, they build elaborate internal explanations to avoid that sense. Yes, leaders, at least some of the time, appear to know exactly what they're doing. But the innermost question, the one you actually want answered, does the group as a whole know it's a cult? That one we still can't fully reach, because groups don't have minds. Only the people inside them do, and every one of those people is somewhere different on the spectrum between knowing and not letting themselves know. Here's what we do know. The more closely researchers look at these groups, the more the line blurs. Behaviors we once thought were unique to crazy, fringe groups, isolation tactics, information control, love bombing, manufactured urgency, keep turning up in places we don't usually think to look. Workplaces, fitness communities, political movements, online forums, family systems. The wall between a cult and an organization with a strong culture has been getting thinner for as long as people have studied it, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the techniques are the same, and the internal experience of being persuaded feels the same from inside any group strong enough to use them, then the difference between cult and not a cult might not be about what the group believes at all. It might just be about how hard it is to leave. There's a recording that surfaces occasionally in documentaries about groups like this. A phone call between a former member and someone they left behind, someone still inside. The person who left asks gentle questions. How are you sleeping? Do you ever talk to your old friends? Are you allowed to look things up online? And the person still inside answers every question immediately, confidently, with the exact phrasing the group teaches. Until one question lands differently. And there's a pause. Just a pause. Long enough that you can hear it. And then the answer comes anyway, the approved one, but a half second too late. Whether or not that person on the inside understood, in that moment, exactly what they were part of, something in them heard the question. Maybe that's where it starts.